Handy Sandy welcomes you to the Muzeum Wojska Polskiego, the National War Museum here in Warsaw. Let's go and have a look at some planes, etc. And here we have our first tank. It's a Czech tank called an IS-2, 1943. 4 people, 46 tons, 37 kilometers an hour with a maximum range of 240 kilometers, having a howitzer gun. Next door, we have a half track, as they're known. A lightweight motorized Gunt 48. 5 people would man it, 9.53 tons, 72 kilometers an hour top speed, 320 kilometer an hour range. This is all at the Muzeum Wojska Polskiego, the Polish War Museum, just by the Most Poniatowski, the Poniatowski Bridge in central Warsaw. Of course, the old fighter jets. This is a MiG-21. Weighs 8,500 kilograms. Maximum speed of 2.1 max. And there we have a statue of Obrońców, the 1917-1918, protecting the Ojczyzna, the homeland. Here we have a MiG-29, obviously far more modern. Weighing 8,000 kilograms, 2,500 kilometers an hour. Maximum range 2,100 kilometers. And they're pretty big aircrafts, if you ask me, just standing next to them. Larger than I imagined. Imagine how much thrust comes out of these twin jet engines. Let's continue. This is, they call it samolot szkoleniowego, a training aircraft. Call it TS-11 Iskra, which is actually a Polish fighter jet, which is a training jet. Next door you have the Republic of Poland, which would have been a private aircraft used by the government. It's called Yakovlek Yak-40. Let's have a look. There you go. Have a look. And here, next door, it's a transport aircraft called an AN-26, weighing 16,000 kilograms, flying at 7,500 meters at 400 kilometers an hour, but a range of 1,100 kilometers. And under it, a little fighter jet. Well, not so little, but small compared to the transport aircraft. It was a samolot, an Iriada training aircraft. So it's another training aircraft. 800 kilometers an hour, flying up to 12,000 meters. And of course, some cannons. All absolutely lethal. These are 75mm field guns. This is a 280mm siege mortar from 1914. And it continues. 122mm field howitzer from 1910 to 1930 manufactured. 75mm burst field cannon barrel. And finally, 120mm cannon built by the French in 1878. And helicopters. Here is a Śmigłowiec helicopter, Mi-24D, so effectively a gunship. It weighs 8,300 kilograms approximately, maximum speed of 335 kilometers an hour, and a range of 1,125 kilometers. It can stay in the air up to 2 hours and 35 minutes and requires a team of 3 people, minimum 2 to 3 people, to operate. Another helicopter, it's a multi-function helicopter, an Mi-2P. Maximum range 270 to 350 kilometers with a maximum speed of 210 kilometers an hour. These are all multi-functions, or multifunctional, as they would say. And this is all at the National War Museum, or just next to the National War Museum here in Warsaw. Right in the town centre, literally a few minutes walk from Nowy Świat. And you have a beautiful park that's just underneath it. Some rockets, an SA-2. It weighs 2,300 kilograms. It can travel at 885 meters a second. Unreal. I wouldn't fancy seeing that. This one is an Elbrus 9K72. ...650-kilometer range the actual truck would have at maximum speed of 60 kilometers an hour. And next to him is a 9K51 rocket launcher. All-track vehicle. And the famous Star. Handy Sandy's grandfather was actually an engineer who developed the engine for one of the first stars back in the 1940s and 50s, or 50s really. Here we have some older fighter planes. For example, this is a fighter plane called a Jak or Jack 9P. Here's some information. Some anti-aircraft guns. A bomber, twin engines, called a Tu-25. Pretty dangerous stuff. They effectively look like fighter bombers. This particular one is a PE-2FT dive bomber. They fly at 8,800 meters with a maximum range of about 1,300 kilometers, holding about 1,000 kilograms of armaments, or bombs, should we say. Another fighter, the IL-10 ground attack aircraft. 800 kilometer range and maximum speed of 530 kilometers. And another attack aircraft. And a few more artillery weapons. This one is a field howitzer, 105 millimeter. Then a 15 centimeter, or 150 mil, heavy field howitzer. A rocket launcher, 30 centimeter rocket launcher. And a German torpedo, sadly. These particular heavy guns were taken from ships. Particularly big. And the torpedoes are far larger than I imagined. 120 millimeters. Another cannon, 152 millimeter. These are the 1930s, funnily enough. Or not funnily enough. Another universal cannon. And more tanks. Probably the preferred choice in any attack. A T-55 medium tank. Amazing, they could do 500 kilometers in one tank of juice. Maximum speed of 50 kilometers an hour. 100mm gun. Here we have what looks like an amphibious. It is indeed a PT-76 amphibious with a crew of 3, 14 tons in weight. 240 horsepower V6 with a maximum speed of 44 kilometers an hour, 240 kilometer range, and whilst amphibious it could manage up to 10 kilometers an hour. Another medium tank is the T-34 with an 85mm. Probably one of the most famous tanks. Well, apart from maybe the Panthers, but still very famous. And the Shermans, etc. Next we have another motorized howitzer, 122mm. Amazing, they get these chunks of metal to go 60 kilometers an hour with a 500-mile range, and we're talking about, this is quite antiquated equipment. Here is another motorized howitzer. Here's an armoured personnel carrier to carry troops around, but also managing 60 kilometers an hour and over 500 kilometers of range. Here we have a also amphibious wheeled personnel carrier. Next to him, again amphibious, a BRDM armoured reconnaissance vehicle. Small gun, 12mm, top speed of up to 90 kilometers an hour with a range of 500. They're still managing 8-9 kilometers an hour in water. A further amphibious vehicle, but this time with wheels, range of 750 kilometers and managing up to 100 kilometers an hour. Here is another wheeled personnel carrier, and finally one of the most famous designs, I think they call it the Duck, the BAV ZIL 485 amphibious, 510 kilometer range, 8-9 kilometers in water, top speed of 60 kilometers an hour. And there we go.